guys, Happy New Year and welcome to my channel. I am shocked that it's 2022. Oh my god. Hey guys, welcome to my channel and Happy New Year. Oh my gosh, it's 2022. It feels like it should still be 2019, but that is besides the point. What do you guys think of my little hat? I'm just like, you know, I gotta put feelers out. Like, what do you guys think? This was actually my mom's. I think I have a picture of her in it on our Christmas card. I can't remember if it's this one. I know she was wearing a little hat. Maybe I'll put it on the screen. Yes, my mom looked like Barbie. And moving on. This is my first video of 2022. I thought it'd be a great video to film for my first video because this is the time of year that we're setting goals, intentions, resolutions, and whatnot for ourselves, and maybe some of you guys have it on your list of goals to read more or to just get into reading point blank. I think this would be a great video for you. It was actually my goal. I think it was heading into 2020 to become a reader because I was always the type of person that said I am not into reading. I'm not a big reader. The words just did not digest at all. I feel like I would read them and it just would not even register. So not only in 2020 did I become a reader, I literally started a book club that year. So I went from not reading at all to leading a book club. It's just via Instagram DM. We're still going strong. So if you guys want to join it, you can just DM me on Instagram and let me know if you want to join. So if it's one of your goals to become a reader this year, you definitely can do it. I think you just have to find the genre that you love, and there's a few really good like entry-level books that will, not really entry-level, but just things that I think will help you get into reading, and I will mention which titles those are in this video, which I think a lot of them are, honestly. There's just some books that will hook you and then kind of get you in that rhythm of reading. So I'll talk about those today, but I'm basically just going to be rating and reviewing every single book I read this year, and I won't spoil anything. I'll just kind of give a gist of each one, and we can just chat about them. So let's go ahead and get into the video. Without further ado, let's talk about all of the books I read in 2021. Okay, so I'm just gonna go based off of my Goodreads app and just books that I have logged in 2021 because I like to give books away to friends or family after I read them. So I don't have every single copy of the books that I have, so I thought it'd just be easier. Even some are on my Kindle because now I have a Kindle. Marcus got me one. So I think it'd just be easier to read it via the app so that I can kind of stay organized. So before I get into it, I just kind of want to share a little bit about the books that I like to read. I am primarily into fiction. I do not read nonfiction. I'm not into self-help books. I do not like autobiographies. Like, that is just not my cup of tea. These are more for entertainment purposes. So I think that if you guys are, you know, maybe trying to find something along those lines, maybe some like drama or some thrillers or romance, there's definitely that here for you. I would say that is, you know, what I read most of the time. So I read 14 books this year. Sorry, in 2021. 5,127 pages read, which I think is the most I've read in my entire life. Like, even if we read that many books in high school, I didn't read them. Like, I literally just scanned pages or cheated. Like, I did not read novels or anything like in school. First book that I want to share, I'm starting off extremely strong. First book that I read in 2021 and still to this day is the best book that I've ever read. The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Jenkins Reid. I give it 5 stars because duh. It is an incredible book. I will literally talk to anyone about this who will listen. I want everyone to read this book, all of my friends, all of my family. It is fantastic, and I don't even want to say too much because it will spoil. You know, there's like kind of a storyline twist that I did not expect at all. I sometimes go into books not really knowing much about them. Like, maybe I hear a few people recommend them, people that I know that like the same genre as me. If I hear people talk about it a lot, I'll just start reading it. I won't even read like, you know, a summary or anything like that because I'm like, this looks like something I'll like. And then I kind of just like to be like taken by surprise throughout the entire thing. And I do think the twist that happens in the book is not mentioned in the summary because I think it would kind of ruin it. I believe the author has said that Evelyn Hugo is loosely based on Elizabeth Taylor. She's basically just like a Hollywood icon, and she marries 7 different men and just kind of walks you through this whole timeline of her life and tells her whole life story, being a famous actress in the 1950s and then leaving the business in the 80s. It's also one of those books that takes you from present to past. So present day Evelyn Hugo is an older woman. She's lived her life. She's ready to tell her story and write a book. So she hires a writer to help her write that book. So you're kind of traveling in between the storytelling of her life and then also present day hers. So it's extremely interesting. I do not want to say too much. Like I said, just trust me. It's glamorous. It's beautifully written. It's like It's emotional. I can't even tell you guys how many times I cried, and I never thought I would have cried from a book. Like, I just didn't think I was that kind of person. I cry all the time, like, if I'm honest, but this book really just captivated me. It made me feel extreme empathy for the character, and I just loved it so much. It was just one of those stories that was fun to read, but also I walked away with something after I read it, and I think that's just like the best thing a book could give you. It's one of those stories that I think if it was made into like a motion picture movie, it would be winning awards. Like, it would be the one sweeping at the Oscars and all this stuff, because it's just such an amazing story. Like I said, that was the best book that I read in 2021. I have one more title in these books from Taylor Jenkins Reid that I will talk about in a minute, but she also wrote a really popular book called Daisy Jones and the Six, which I believe is about like a rock band in maybe the 70s. I'm not completely sure, I haven't read it, but if you guys have read that and you liked it, let me know in the comments. I've heard most of the time overwhelmingly good things about it, but I've heard some mixed reviews, so I'm curious. If you've read it, should I read it? Let me know. Okay, moving on to the next book. This was the year I was introduced to Colleen Hoover, which if you guys are into reading or maybe you are on TikTok, I'm sure you've heard a lot about Colleen Hoover. I honestly feel like I just said TikTok, like I was like a mom that didn't know what it was. Okay, so the first book that I ever read by her was called Verity. Gave it 5 stars. If you guys have not read this, I highly recommend it. I think this is the perfect book to get you into reading. It's suspenseful, there's love, there's romance, there's drama, and it's also really dark. So I feel like you just want to keep reading it because you're like, what the hell is going to happen next? It's one of those books. Also, when I read this is not what I was expecting from Colleen Hoover at all. From what I heard most of the time is that she specialized in romance and just like love. So when I read this, I was like, wait, it started off with like a really dark scene, the first chapter, and I was so shocked. I was like, okay, this is not what I was expecting, because again, I just picked this book up off of recommendations. I didn't even know what it was about. I don't know if anyone else does that. Is that kind of a weird thing? Like, do you guys all read the summaries of books before you buy them or read them? I just kind of go off recommendations. Sometimes I read the back if I haven't heard anyone talk about it, but I just usually screenshot stuff that I see on Instagram and then I order it and I read it, and I'm just totally shocked by the storyline. So Verity, who is a character in the book, the title of the book as well, she is a famous writer, and she is in the process of writing a very popular, I think it's a trilogy, I think maybe the 3rd book it is, it still hasn't come out, sorry, I read this at the beginning of the year, something like that. She has a continuation of a book that she still has not published. She gets into an accident and becomes essentially brain dead, and she obviously can't write her book because she is pretty much lifeless, and she's married, so her husband reaches out to another writer and asks if she will anonymously publish in Verity's name and finish the series for her, basically for her fans and for her publisher, just so that they can finish the series and live out her legacy, because she still has all these notes of the series, so she can come and look through everything and then just write basically what she, you know, thinks that should go with the rest of the story and just go based off of all of her notes. So they have the new writer come in and stay with them, and things are not really what they seem at the house. That is all I want to say. There's just like a major dark twist. She just basically starts reading all these notes, and she learns more and more about the couple, about Verity, and it just becomes a very suspenseful book and a major page turner. I'll definitely say that. So 5 stars on that one. Definitely recommend. We actually read that one in my book club, as well as The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I think that was our January book, so that was the first book we read, and this was, I think, our next one. So we all loved both of those, so they were great. And since I love Verity so much, I followed it up with another Colleen Hoover book. I read It Ends With Us, and this is one that is extremely popular on TikTok. Like I said, if you guys are on TikTok, I'm sure if you're on book TikTok, she's just become extremely popular on social media these past few years. This was another 5 stars for me. I guess I'm not too harsh of a judge, but actually I started off the year really strong with some amazing books. This was another one that I, again, would talk to people all day about if they let me. I loved this book. It was darker than I thought. It was definitely a love story, but there was a twist that made it really emotional, and it just wasn't a basic love story that you would read and be like, oh, you know, this is predictable. I was not expecting the twist and turn that we took in the book. I definitely cried. The cover of the book has a quote from Cami Garcia. It says, "Every person with a heartbeat should read this book." That's exactly how I feel. Another page turner, another one where you're like, what is going to happen next? What is she going to do? What is he going to do? So there's a main character. She meets a guy. They fall in love. you know, there's kind of a roller coaster along the way and there's a few twists and turns that happen. I really don't want to say anything at all, but I do have to issue a trigger warning. I do kind of want to mention this throughout while I can, but if I forget, I will try to have trigger warnings in the description box, because I try to do that in the book club, just because this one like taught me a lesson in that, because there is some domestic abuse in this book, and I just wanted to mention that for any of you guys that have suffered with that, or if that's a very triggering topic for you, I would shy away from this book. And there is a website too where you could look up trigger warnings on books. That's what I've started doing for my book club, because there has been a lot of times where there has been different forms of assault in books, and I wish I would have known beforehand. So now I look up a title and see what trigger warnings they issue, like what difficult topics they deal with in the book that I should let everyone know about before we get into it. So you can look into that before you read a book if you guys have anything you're trying to avoid. I would describe this book as heartbreakingly beautiful. Like, it is heartbreaking, but it is such an incredible story, and I highly suggest it for those of you that would be interested in reading something like this. It was another one in my book club that pretty much everyone gave it 5 stars, and we all loved it so much. It just sparked so much conversation. I walked away with like a whole new form of empathy for the topic that was discussed, and it's something I'm really grateful that I read. Moving on to my next title. It's actually something that is not a 5-star, not even close. I gave this one 2 stars. And that, I think, is an unpopular opinion for this title, because I think a lot of people did love this book. We all kind of had a same general consensus in the book club that we didn't love this. And the book is called Luckiest Girl Alive by Jessica Knoll. This one is actually getting made into a movie as we speak. I think they filmed it like this summer, starring Mila Kunis as the main character, which made me like the book a little bit more, because I think she is very likable, and the main character in this book is not likable at all. This is another one, several trigger warnings that I have to issue. They deal with a lot of difficult topics. I will have them in the description box. They deal with a lot of difficult topics, and I think for how heavy this book is and how traumatic it is, it was not worth it to me. It was like a bit traumatizing, if I'm honest. I have another one that I loved. This I gave 4 stars. It's The Guest List by Lucy Foley. So I loved this book. It's a suspenseful thriller-like kind of book. So if you guys are into that kind of thing, if you need a page turner, this is another one that I would recommend for someone trying to get into reading if you're into that kind of genre. It's so good. I could not stop reading it. I think I read it in 2 days because I just wanted to see what was going to happen. It's one of those where, you know, something bad happens and you're trying to rule out each person, like who did what. Basically, there's this like beautiful wedding happening on this island that is known to be not cursed in like a ghostly way, but there's just something kind of dark about it, and they're getting married there anyways, and everyone kind of knows there's like this like underlying like weirdness on this island, and everyone comes and they spend the weekend there and somebody dies. It's just kind of cataloging this whole wedding weekend and just everything that keeps like happening throughout the weekend and all these secrets that keep coming out. If you're into suspenseful murder mystery, kind of like who did it kind of situations, you will love this book. Again, I would love to see this as a movie. I wouldn't be so worried like, oh, they're gonna ruin the book, because I wasn't so emotionally attached to this book. I don't find myself like so into the characters and obsessed with the characters when I'm reading a more suspenseful book. It's more for the story and for the captivation of the book that I enjoy. I get more like, you know, attached to romance and, you know, the more emotional stories that make me really feel for the characters. That's when I feel like, you know, kind of protective over the book. But this one, I wasn't particularly rooting for any of the characters. I was just there for the storyline. Moving on to my next book, I have Layla by Colleen Hoover. Another Colleen Hoover book, because I was like, I need more. I read those 2 earlier in the year and I need to get into more of them. This was one that I was not expecting the storyline at all. It took such a crazy turn. Not a crazy turn, just like I didn't expect what this book was about at all. I just seen so many people post about it. I see Layla, like the book cover or just like whatever, all over Instagram, and I'm like, you know what, I love Colleen Hoover, so I'm just gonna read that. I see a lot of people recommending it. I give it 4 stars, and it just took kind of like a ghostly turn. There's like a supernatural element to it, which even as I was like halfway through the book, I was not expecting. I was like, wait, what kind of damn book is this? I was not expecting a ghost. And I did really like the way they wrapped it up in the end. I ended up really loving the story. I just wasn't expecting that turn at all. And throughout the book, like, you're not really sure what's going on. You're like, what is happening? But they kind of all bring it back and it all makes sense. So you just kind of have to, you know, get through those few chapters where you're like, wait, what happened to the romance novel that I was reading? I'm so confused. Because it goes from like love to something a bit weird. I really don't want to say too much because, again, I don't want to spoil it for you guys, but it's a Colleen Hoover book. Page turner, really good one. I just gave it 4 stars because it didn't I didn't obsess over it, but it was a great book. So that's kind of like my tier of rating. I probably should have said that. 5 stars is like obsessed, want to tell everyone in the world about it. I loved it. 4 stars was like, loved the book, great story, really enjoyed my time reading it, page turner, but I am not like living, breathing, dying, sleeping, eating for it. But 4 is still a really good rating. 3 is like mediocre, I would say. 2 is bad. 1, I've never rated anything 1. Like 1 would be, I think, well, did I might have one rating in here, but I might have put 2 because I felt bad for doing that. I guess 1 would be like, I didn't even finish the book and I hated it. So, because you can't do 0 stars, you have to do at least 1. So 1 is not good. But anyways, moving on to the next book. This one is Then She Was Gone by Lisa Jewell. And this was a very good book. I actually don't know why I only gave it 3 stars. I think at the time that I read it, honestly, I was like kind of disturbed by it. And I think that's honestly why I give it 3 stars. If you enjoy suspenseful, dark, those kind of genres, you will love this book. It takes, again, a lot of twists and turns. It is one of those where you want to keep reading because you're like, what is going to happen? Because the storyline is basically following this mom who has had a missing daughter for, how many years has it been? 10 years. She went missing when she was 15 years old and they still don't know what happened to her. There's been no evidence of finding a body or any like leads of where she could have gone, hence the title, Then She Was Gone, because she almost just like disappeared. And the mom has just kind of never been the same since she lost her daughter, obviously, and she seems to be really still the only one still trying to find her. So it just kind of takes you, it's just kind of depressing, honestly. I think that a lot of people would give this 5 stars because it's almost like a dark, twisted, like Lifetime movie. Like that's how I would have described it, just less cheesy. We read it in the book club and some people did think it was kind of predictable and I didn't really agree with that. I guess you could see the ending coming, but I think like halfway through the book you start to kind of piece together what's going on. But I still think it was a good book. I think a lot of people would really enjoy it if you guys like this kind of genre. Just something about a missing young girl just was like kind of just too dark for me, and I think I figured out that I don't enjoy that. I would have rather a husband like killed his mistress or something. Like that's a little bit better. Just like kids is where I like, that sounds so bad, but you guys know what I mean. Like I didn't mind like the guest list, like someone dies, but like something about it being a kid, it was just kind of hard for me to read, and there was just a lot of moments where it was hard for me to read. So but it definitely is a page turner if you guys are looking for something that's going to get you captivated in. Just a forewarning on some of that. It's just, you know, it's about a missing 15-year-old girl, and it just kind of scares you a little bit, like honestly, because I have nieces and it just freaked me out. So that is really the only reason I gave it 3 stars. But moving on to a lighter title. I think I read this right after I read that one because I'm like, I need something happy and cute and an easy read. And I just got into this author this year. It's Tessa Bailey. I gave this one 5 stars. It's called It Happened One Summer. I'm sure you guys have heard about this on Instagram, I don't know if it's on TikTok. I've heard about it on a few podcasts, and I just hear a lot of people talking about it. It was so good. So this was definitely like a romance love story kind of thing, and I just absolutely loved it. So this is my first Tessa Bailey book. I do have 3 more titles by her that I read this year. 3 of which I actually read in my quarantine last week. So I read those in 1 week, but they're very easy reads. They're not like anything that's going to change your life by any means. Like it's not like a story that you're going to walk away and be like, wow, I really learned something. You're just going to really enjoy it and just like fall into it and just like, you know, love it. So it's just one of those that like made me smile, and I really love this book. So Colleen Hoover, if you guys have read Colleen Hoover, there is definitely a lot of like, I'm going to talk more about this when I talk about the other Tessa Bailey books, but these books are very like spicy, I would say. Like there's a lot of sex. I'm just going to say that. I'm just going to point blank say it. This was my first introduction into this book, and I hadn't read many like it. I'm sure there's books with so much more, you know, of those moments and like straight up erotica, but this was like, you know, in the Colleen Hoover books, I feel like there's a lot of like sexual scenes, but they don't fully dive into like, you know, each detail of the moment. In this book, they kind of, you know, go into detail. Like a sex scene would be like half of a chapter. So they really just like go into every single detail of what's happening. But I really loved the characters in this book and just like their love and how it became. I just really, really loved it. I thought it was a great story, and it was a great one to read in the summertime because I did read it in the summer because it's very like nautical. I really enjoy Tessa Bailey, and I read a few more from her that I will get to at the end of this video because I read them as my most recent reads for this book. So there is going to be a follow-up or a spin-off to this book. So I'm excited to read that one. I'm going to read it as soon as it comes out. I don't think it's available on my Kindle yet, which I don't know why. I heard someone talk about how they read it, but I couldn't get it yet. So I'm excited to read that one, and I will share on Instagram what my thoughts are. So follow me. So I really loved that. You guys will have to read it and let me know what you think. I would love to hear your thoughts after you read it if you guys have never read anything like that before, like love story kind of thing. It might be a bit cheesy to some people, but I think you just gotta embrace it. Like whatever, it's a bit cheesy. It's a damn love story, like, okay? So let me know what you think, but 5 stars for me all the way around. Okay, next book is Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid, same author that wrote 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. This actually came out this summer and I gave it 5 stars. I have heard mixed reviews about this one. I've heard amazing things, but I've also heard like meh kind of reviews, which I don't know if I loved this so much because I felt like I related so much to the main character. She just was the older sister of her family, and she had to just like take care of her siblings and be so strong, and she went through so much, and I think that I just really, really related to her. So what I love about this book too, and what I guess I love about Taylor Jenkins Reid, this is only my 2nd book from her. I'm not sure if they're all like this, but it is in the same world as Evelyn Hugo. So there is also that like star Hollywood element. This book basically follows 4 siblings that are all children of a famous singer, Mick Riva. He actually was one of the husbands of Evelyn Hugo. So that's kind of like a fun little tie and nod to the readers that read Evelyn Hugo. I really loved that. So you hear her name mentioned in that book and you just recognize the name Mick Riva. And he's basically kind of like a deadbeat dad, and these 4 siblings are like navigating life through being these famous kids, but while also not really having any real tie to him. So there's like a lot of hurt and pain and struggle, and just the dynamic of all of them I loved so much. And the oldest sister I related to on such a strong level. There's just a lot of layers to this story. 5 stars for me because I did really, really like it. So that was a great one. Going from great to not so great, I have another 2-star rating. I think this was one that I was mentioning. I felt bad. I didn't want to give it 1 star, so I just gave it 2. And I think the reason I was so disappointed is because I thought I was gonna love this book. So this was actually our October read for my book club. I wanted to read something, you know, a little bit spooky or like something kind of like Halloween-y, you know? Halloween-y, like Kourtney Kardashian says.
Your hair doesn't go with your outfit. You're kind of Halloween-y.
But this is The Witches of New York by Amy McKay. I thought I was gonna love this book. It sounded like it had so much promise. I think that the problem was it just really dragged on, and I was like, what is happening? I mean, fantasy is kind of like one of my favorite genres. I know it might not be reflected in this. I haven't read too many this year, but I love like fantasy fiction and historical fiction and that kind of thing, is for like movies and TV shows as well as some books. I've just been kind of on a romance kick lately, but this is typically something I really love. So I was really disappointed that I didn't like it. This was actually the first book ever that got horrible reviews in my book club as well, because a few of the girls actually said they didn't even finish it. That's how much they didn't like it. Nothing to See Here by Kevin Wilson. I loved this book so much, and this is another one that I think, not if you are trying to get into reading. I think if you're into reading, you will like this book. It's not so much a page turner rather than just something that I think is a great story. Almost like one of those things that I feel like people might read it in school one day. Like I feel that way about Where the Crawdads Sing, this book, and I'm trying to think about what else I think that about, maybe something that I read in 2020, but I can't remember right now. But there's just sometimes those books that like, you know, are so well written and have just like such a like interesting element to them. Like the way this story went, I was not expecting it at all, because like I said, I don't read the summary, and I was a bit shocked when I, you know, started getting more into the story and they revealed like what this book is about. I was like, okay, what kind of book am I reading? Kind of like with the Layla story when I wasn't expecting the supernatural element. This book, basically it's about two kids that can burst into flames, and like if they get too stressed out or if they get mad, they literally light on fire. And for me, like if I read that before, I would have been like, okay, this is not for me. It was very well written and honestly a really moving story. I had so much love for the kids in this book. Some of the moments in this book like really just got me, and I really loved the story. And obviously the flames are a metaphor for, you know, whatever you could read online. There's been different theories that I've read about what the flames mean. But I really, really liked it, and it was very well written. Okay, so my last 3 books for this video, they are the Tessa Bailey trilogy. I don't even want to say what the trilogy is called, you guys, because I don't even like that they called it this, because it really just kind of takes away from the books. The first book is called Fix Her Up, and then the second book is called Love Her or Lose Her. And the last book is called Tools of Engagement. So they all kind of have like a theme. I mean, Love Her or Lose Her doesn't really have like a construction theme, but basically the family in the book owns like a flipping business and a construction business, whatever, where they flip homes and sell them and, you know, all that, like real estate. So that's kind of like the theme in this book. But they call the series the Hot and Hammered series. Like the title is just like, okay, like we get it. You want this to be like a steamy book, like we get it. It's just like a bit too much. But I did really enjoy these books. I do find not as good as It Happened One Summer. I think that was a fabulous book by Tessa Bailey. I loved that one. Fix Her Up was probably my favorite from this series. I don't know, actually. I think the last one was my favorite, but we'll get into each one. So basically all of these books from Tessa Bailey, they would all be like amazing rom-coms, like, you know, like the classics that we love to watch, like the cheesy rom-coms like The Holiday and why can't I think of any when I literally love rom-coms? You guys know what I mean. I just watched The Holiday, so that's why I was able to think of that. They're just so comforting and easy to watch, and you know, it's not anything heavy, it's easy, it's cute, there's just like something about them. All of these have that same element, so if you guys enjoy that, I think you would like these books, because they're like kind of mindless, like they're just cute, they're, you know, easy reads, like I said. So this first one is called Fix Her Up, and this one kind of has the element of like fake dating, where they decide like, okay, we're gonna date so that I can get respect from my family, being the youngest sibling, and I finally have a boyfriend who's respected, and I'm gonna be, you know, finally grown up, and I'm gonna date this man because she's in a big family and she wants her family to take her seriously. And then the male love interest in the book is basically trying to get this new position for work, where he wants to be a sports newscaster, and he has this reputation of being kind of like a playboy because he's a former MLB player. He played baseball and he's pretty famous. He was really good, but he got injured, so he couldn't play anymore. So now he wants to be a broadcaster or a commentator, whatever they call it. But he needs to fix up his image a little bit. So he needs to date like, you know, girl next door, Miss All-American, cute, wholesome girl. So they fake date for reasons that they're each going to benefit from. And you know, what do you know? Something happens. Like more develops, obviously. That's what always happens in these stories. But what I really liked about this is that she was always in love with him. They basically known each other their entire lives because he's from her hometown. They grew up together, and he is her brother's best friend. So she's known him forever. She's the younger sister, and she's always had a thing for him. So that just kind of was like a really cute element, that she has been like dreaming about him since she was a kid, and then now she's like in his presence and they're fake dating, and she's kind of just like living her dreams. And I think that's actually really cute, and I just really love the inner dialogue of these stories, and that's kind of, I think, what is so special about books. Like, movies are great, and I love movies, I love TV shows, but you don't get the inner dialogue on a show. Like, I just love hearing what each character is thinking. It just makes it so much more interesting, and that's why books are so fascinating, because you don't get that on TV. So I really loved that one. It is very cute. I think my second favorite in the series, there's only 3. I read it during my quarantine. I was exposed to COVID, so I just kind of started the series. I needed something easy to read, and it really did help me through the time that I was in quarantine, because I was having such bad anxiety, and this I really like escaped in, and it wasn't anything too heavy. It wasn't anything that like added to my anxiety or my emotion. It just kind of was like a fun little thing to read. The next one in the book is based off 2 characters that are also in the first book. It was a little bit of foreshadowing of what the next book was going to be about, because she was struggling with her marriage. She was a friend of Georgie, who the first book is based on Georgie and Travis. Sorry, I didn't say that. Georgie is friends with Rosie and they become closer in the first book, and Rosie kind of admits that she's having some troubles with her marriage. And then so what do you know? The next book is about Rosie and Dominic's marriage struggles. So this one I did like. I just found this one to be the cringiest one out of all of them. It was just like the most unrealistic, and I will say these books, like, I'm not kidding, the main theme in a lot of these are sexual tension. Like, that is the third main character in these books, like, no joke. This one especially, like, I feel like the entire thing was driven by sexual tension. It was kind of crazy, but it was a bit cringy. I liked the characters, it was cute, and I liked the ending. I thought it was sweet. This one was just a bit cringy for me, so I gave this one 3 stars just because it was like a little bit like some parts that was like eye roll moments, but it was still an easy read and good for the time in my life that I was at. So I think that's like a thing too, like you need to be like in the right mindset for whatever books you want to read. Like if you're feeling something like heavier and something like that you just really want to dive into and like lose yourself in, read something more like Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, not like a Tessa Bailey book. If you're looking for something light and easy and fresh and quick that you can maybe do in a few days, I would read Tessa Bailey. So that's just kind of my thought process. So in the second book, we kind of get, you know, a little bit more foreshadowing about what the next book is going to be about. The little circle of friends is Georgie, Rosie, and Bethany. So first book is about Georgie, second book is about Rosie, and then the third book is about, you guessed it, Bethany. So she meets this new man who comes into town because he is taking care of his niece that is, you know, basically needing a legal guardian because her mom is dealing with like drug and alcohol addiction. So he is stepping in to be basically a father figure for her and raise her. So that's the big storyline in the book. He's taking care of his 5-year-old niece and just kind of navigating his way through that because he's only 24. So he basically becomes a dad at 24, and he's like a country guy. He's from Texas and he was like a bull rider. So we have like a little bit of like a bit of a twist in this book. We have a cowboy now, okay? So in the first book we had a baseball player who was described as really handsome, which all of these men in this town just seem to be extremely handsome and extremely loving and deep, which is just written by a woman. This third one is actually my favorite in the series because I do feel like, I thought the first one was going to remain my favorite after I started reading this one. I was like, no, I still like Travis and Georgie the best. And something that's nice about these books is that all of these characters are kind of like all intertwined in this whole series, since it is, you know, the same town, the same world. So I don't want to spoil anything. So you still hear about like Georgie in this book, but again, sexual tension was the third main character in this book, but it was still really good and I did really like it. I think I liked their love the best out of all the books. But I don't know, I really like the first one too, but I think that one was my favorite. So they're all just very silly and easy to read. So those are the books I read in 2021. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have anything to recommend for me based off what I've shared with you today, please leave it in the comments. I would love some recommendations. On Goodreads, you can set a goal for yourself for however many books you want to read for the upcoming year. And I set my goal as 20 books, just, you know, a little bit more than 2021. I wanted to keep it realistic. I don't want to like feel bad about myself if I don't reach it. So I think I could definitely manage 20 books. Maybe I'll even read more. But yeah, so that's my goal for the year. What is your goal if you guys are trying to read this year? Is it just getting into reading? Is it reading 50 books or however many books? Let me know in the comments and leave your recommendations below. Like I said, thank you guys so much for watching. Happy New Year, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!